Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the last and final session of this bootcamp on acing the PM internship. The topic for this session is going to be cracking the in-person interview. I will be taking you through the different types of interview questions you might be asked. For each question, I'll give you the rough framework or structure you can follow. And for some of these questions, we will also discuss a practical example and walk you through the solution for that. So without further ado, let me start. If there are people listening, just give a thumbs up or some reaction so that I don't know. Yeah, I have your attention. Okay, that's great. Okay. Is the presentation visible? Yeah, right. Thank you. So, the four interview questions which I will cover here during this session is first is I'll start with behavioral, then I'll move to the product design and product sense, then root cause analysis, then guesstimate. We also have success metrics. I didn't mention that over here. So, those are the five types which we are going to cover. I'll start with the behavioral questions first. So the first question, and this is true for any question type that you're asked, you should try to understand why is that question asked. So first is we all write a lot of stories on resumes. We also write a lot of things which might not be true. So the companies want to know the real you behind the resume, and that is why they ask you these questions. Second is they want to really understand your past experiences and see whether you'll fit in the new role or not. And lastly, so some of those questions are specific to the PM roles that you are interviewing for. So they want to see whether you have those crucial PM skills of stakeholder management, teamwork, whether you are data driven, etc. So for all these reasons, behavioral questions become very important. And in fact, for internships, I have friends who have just had like one written round and the next one was a behavioral round. So that is why I put this as the first one, because these are the questions that take some time to prepare and they are very easy to crack. So your focus should be on ensuring that you don't mess up in these kind of questions. So what are the different kinds of questions you can be asked? First is the generic behavioral questions. So these are usually along the lines of tell me about a time when you faced a challenge or you felt defeated, took ownership, had to deal with a conflict. So questions around those lines. And these are standard for any role which someone is interviewing for. How do you prepare for these generic questions? So you will get a list of most commonly asked questions and you have to prepare stories around them. So initially it might feel overwhelming. So when I had to think about the time I had to face a challenge, so I was blank for some time. I was not sure what is the challenge that I actually faced or did I even face any challenge. But when you look back sufficiently in time, you'll always notice that professionally there have been challenging situations where you uh, took help from someone or you had an idea using which you worked out your way out of that. So you have a list of that question and then try to think where all in your life had you faced a situation which fits in very well with that particular question. Right. One more important point here is when you start thinking about stories. So a story does not just need to answer one question. So it could answer multiple questions at the same time. For example, the situation when you faced a challenge or you took ownership or you had to deal with a conflict. So you could use the same story in all these three different kinds of questions. So this way, make sure that you have a fixed, say 10, 5 to 10 stories which you can fit in most of the questions that are asked. Because generally, if you faced a challenge and you came out of it, then you would have taken ownership as well. So, irrespective of the wording of the question, just make sure you have a good story, a true story to back it up, and that should be sufficient. Right. Next important thing is you need to practice those questions by speaking out loud and writing them down. So what I did when I was in college and I was preparing for these questions, I had gotten a list and for I had created a Google Doc. I wrote the answers to all those questions which I felt could be asked in the interview. And then every few days I used to sometimes just walk around and try to memorize the and try to repeat the answers to that or just stand in front of a mirror and try speaking out aloud. So those are some tactics which you can use to answer or remember these behavioral questions. And the good thing is, once you have them prepared in your mind, even if someone asks you 3-4 months down the line, you will have the answer ready very fast. Then there are certain questions which are okay. So before I move to the PM specific questions, I'll mention a framework over here which can be used. So that is the CAR framework: context, action, result. So you start with describing the context or the situation, what exactly was happening at that moment. Second is you talk about the action. What was the action you did to resolve that conflict or to get out of that situation? And last would be what was the result or what was the outcome of that process. So any good answer that you will see will follow this CAR framework: context first, then the action you took, and finally the result that happened. And you can, while you're speaking out aloud your answers, you can see whether you are following that format or not. Last is there are some PM specific behavioral questions as well. So some of these could be: tell me about a time when you used data to make a decision. So as PMs, you'll need to use data to make a lot of decisions. So it's important to have these questions also ready. Then this one is like the all-time favorite of every interviewer. And when you're applying for your first PM role, you will definitely be asked this question, right? Why do you want to be a PM? So make sure that you have a very crisp and relevant answer prepared to this question. I'll tell you how I prepared an answer to this question. So generally what I do is I divide it into two parts. So first is I talk about some of my personality traits and then link how they are very valuable or useful in product management. For example, uh, I like to maybe communicate. Both written and verbal communications are my strongholds. And in product management, you need the ability to articulate things well. So that is one part of the question where I talk, okay, since I like communicating, I like writing a lot. So I feel this part of the question, this role is fit for me. That is one thing I do. Second is I have always taken up projects which require a lot of hustling, require a lot of ownership, require a lot of stakeholder management. So that again is a quality which is very useful when you are working as a PM. So that is another quality set of traits which I talk about. That is the first part of my answer. Second would be I talk how exactly does a product manager make an impact. So he is always working at the cutting edge of technology and solving problems and bringing an impact in users' lives. So I usually conclude my answer by talking about this, by talking about the fact that a product manager is in a position to make such a large scale impact and how that inspires me. That is the second part of my answer. So I would say that is the framework I follow. Everyone might have a different framework. So you can try to identify your own framework or your own reasons to be a PM, but make sure they are in line with what exactly a PM does. And it is inspiring to hear for the person who's sitting next to you. So that would be my advice on solving this question of why do you want to be a PM? So this is a practice question I want all of us to do. Tell me about a time when you overcame a challenging situation to achieve something. So you think about the context, then action, then result. I'll pause for a minute. And if anyone wants to come on stage and maybe discuss this answer quickly, uh, I can evaluate that and give you feedback. Or if no one wants to volunteer, then I'll go ahead and give the answer I would have given. Aditya, do you want to try answering this question? Okay, no volunteers. So I'll go ahead with answering this question. So my story is this: when I started working out as a product manager, we had the problem of setting up a robust customer feedback classification system. So what was happening is we used to get a lot of customer feedback, but we didn't have we didn't have clarity around the sources it was coming from, the themes of the request. And due to this, we were not able to prioritize the customer request that well and work on things that mattered the most. So this was the context that I'll set first. Then what was the action I took? So here I decided to discuss this with my manager and set up a customer feedback classification system. How I went about setting this is, so first task was to visualize how the entire process would work. So feedback was coming in from a lot of different sources. We decided that no matter the source, the feedback would eventually go to a Google sheet. We needed to write a Google script and use Zapier to redirect the data from different sources. So that was the first part. And second part was then the PM team agreed on deciding a cadence for classifying classifying the feedback and dividing it into different themes. And that is how the responsibilities were split. So that forms the second part of the answer, where I talk about the actions I took and finally what was the result. So using this result, say every fortnight or every 30 days, we were able to share with all the stakeholders, senior management, that okay, this is the list of the most frequently asked customer requests. These are the themes around which they are coming. So this is what we should be working on in the next quarter, or these should be our next set of priorities. So this helped us focus our energies on building things which would have the maximum impact on us as a business and also be most valuable for our customers. So this is the answer I would give. I would start with the context. What was the problem we were facing? Then I'll move on to the action. What were the actions that I took? And it's important. So generally, what would happen is you might have had a project where you were playing a specific role. So don't make it sound as if you were leading that entire project. Clearly mention what were the action uh, you took in order to ensure the success of that project. And last would be to describe the result. So this is the happy state. So what was the happy ending after you took those actions? So this is how I would structure my answer to any question which can be called a behavioral question. Any questions around this? Okay, so let me call Aditi on stage. So Aditi would like to volunteer the answer. Aditi, I've sent you an invite request. Just try accepting it. If you are facing any issue, just write it in the chat box. Aditi, can you try raising your hand? You'll have speaker. You'll have a raise hand icon on the bottom of your screen.
Hi, is it fine if I don't turn my camera on?
Sure, no problem.
All
Yeah.
right. So, can you hear me?
Yes, you're audible.
Just a second. Just a.
Sure, no problem. Oops, looks like Aditi. Aditi, can you hear us? Hello. Hey, Aditi. You're not audible now. Hello.
Aditi, I think you're
Issue is if I'm turning my mic on, then your voice is not on speaker. But I'll just try speaking this way. So, yeah. So
Try
basically,
speaking this
so
way.
if I had to answer this question, I would have said like when so I'm a part of photography and videography club in my college, and
Okay.
I love photography.
Mhm.
So we were trying to create a website for the club and
Right.
for our for to display showcase things that we do as a part of the club. And the
Mhm.
issue that we faced was because of the lockdown,
Mhm.
all our work was stored in a hard drive, and that
Mhm.
was with one person, and it was like 5 TB hard drive with lots
Mhm.
and lots of photographs, and that was not working properly. So when
Mhm.
we wanted to upload photographs on our website, we had nowhere to go because all the good quality photographs were there. So
Mhm.
fortunately, I got the opportunity to coordinate between different stakeholders like the designers, the content creator, and the heads who were
Mhm.
actually communicating between admin and the club.
Mhm.
So I got the opportunity to coordinate between them. And what happened was, since we did not have access to the hard drive, we
Mhm.
decided on going to our social media pages, like on whatever we uploaded on Facebook and so, and decided on taking photographs from there. Now,
Okay.
heads wanted me to do that because I was coordinating, but for me, going through all the posts that we have done so far was a difficult task, and we were like short on time. So
Right.
I reached out to my team members and asked for volunteers.
Mhm.
Fortunately, out of around 40 people, 5 people
Mhm.
volunteered to get the work done, and we distributed the work equally among all the people.
Mhm.
And we then decided to uh, get all the photographs, collected that on a spreadsheet, and then sorted that out and uploaded that on the website. So that's how we were able to get the, because we also uploaded whenever any event was there or fest was there, we always uploaded the best 10 or 15 photographs. So that
Mhm.
reduced the time that we had to spend when we were trying to get photographs from hard drive. So we had best collection there. And then again, when we took photographs from there, we sorted out the photographs like best out of the best and then uploaded that on website. So that's how it went, and I would say we were able to overcome that challenge.
Yeah, I think it's a great answer. You just need to practice it a bit, make it more crisp so that you are able to answer it in, say, 60 seconds rather than the time you took. Another thing is you need to clearly bring out what you did. So here it seems as if this was a team task that was to be done, because what didn't come out very clearly was what was your role in doing that task. So you have to maybe talk about how you coordinated or how you helped sort those pictures, or were you the one who helped identifying the volunteers or filtering the final pictures. So just make sure that whatever story you tell, it clearly shows what was the work you did. So that would be my only recommendation. But I think, yeah, in positions of responsibility that you have, during the course of that you face a lot of challenges, and this sounds like a very good story to cover. But just make sure that whatever challenge you talk about, you clearly highlight the problems or the challenge, that you clearly highlight the work that you did as part of that challenge, to solve that challenge. Okay, thanks, Aditi. I'll remove you from stage now.
So much.
Okay, I'll start sharing my presentation again. Okay. Moving on from behavioral, we'll move to the next section, which is the most commonly asked interview question, and I think this is the one which people usually prepare the most as well. So this is the product design question, and the intent here is simple. You, as a PM, you'll be designing a lot of products. So this question is mainly to understand whether you possess those traits which are required to be a great PM, whether you have customer empathy, whether you have structured thinking, whether you can deal with ambiguity, whether you can think creatively and prioritize ruthlessly. So what are the examples of these questions? Designing Facebook for kids is one example. Designing a music app for truck drivers is another example. What is the approach to solve these questions? Standard approach: like don't worry too much. Circles approach is the best approach. I'll quickly unpack how exactly does circles approach work and how you can use it. So the first thing you need to do is ask clarifying questions to understand the problem and identify the goals. So this is the C part, which is comprehending the situation. But in order to make my understanding clear, I usually call it ask clarifying questions to understand the problem. So first thing is you understand the context of the problem, who is the target user, what is the geography, and then you identify goals, whether we want to increase revenue, whether it's a new market or a new user segment. So ask those questions to understand the problem and identify goals. That will be the first part. Second is you identify the customer personas and select the personas you will prioritize. So any product that you build, there will be multiple user segments which you could focus on. So list down all those segments and then identify the persona you will prioritize. So you one point to notice, you must have a like sound logic for why you want to prioritize that persona. This could be based on the size of that segment or the revenue potential of that segment, but there has to be some logic. Third is list the customer needs. You will highlight the needs and pain points of the customer. Fourth is you, out of all those laundry list of needs that you have, you will prioritize the needs you want to focus on. Point five is you list the solutions to deliver on those customer needs. Next is, so depending on the question, if it's an MVP type question, you will prioritize the solution you want to go ahead with. So if it's not an MVP question, it's just identifying features, then this step might not be required. And last is summarize. So these are the 7 steps which you'll need to take into consideration while you're solving any product design or product improvement. So product improvement also works on similar lines. So just use these 7 things to solve any product design question that comes at your end. In this session, I will not be solving an actual product design question because that itself would take up 30 minutes. So here the goal is to just give you a brief overview, and you'll find tons of videos on YouTube where you can clearly see how a candidate is approaching the product design question. However, there are a few key pointers which I would request you to keep in mind. First is you maintain a constant dialogue with the interviewer. So don't take too many long pauses. Whatever is going on in your mind, discuss it with the interviewer. Second is make assumptions and move on. As I talked in the previous session as well, there will be a lot of vague situations or vague cases in the question. So make assumptions and move on. Don't get stuck. Third is summarize each step. So I've written 7 steps. After each step, make sure that you are summarizing to the interviewer, because the interviewer is a distracted soul. He has 10 different things on his mind, and he also has his laptop and his mobile phone to get him distracted. So make sure that you're summarizing at each step, and he doesn't have to apply a lot of energy to understand what you're saying. Another important thing, long pauses should be avoided. Our attention spans are getting lesser and lesser as time is progressing. So if you keep quiet for more than 30 seconds, you are going to lose the interview. So even if you don't have everything structured in your mind, even if it is just one user need that you were able to highlight or identify, mention it. So you say that this is the user need I can think of right now. Let me think a bit more. This way, he'll know that you are thinking and you are not stuck. Next would be practice these questions a lot. Like telling you about this theory is easy, but solving them requires a lot of practice. So make sure that you're practicing these questions a lot. You can form a peer group in your college, or you could use stellarpeers.com. I'll talk about it in the end. And last but not the least is that wow factor in the solution is a must. So imagine it from the interviewer side. He is interviewing 20, 30, 50 people just like you who are as passionate about that role. So what is there in your solution or in the way you present your solution that will separate you from the rest? It could be the way you structured, the way you quoted personal examples, or the kind of ideas you came up with. So make sure that there is something in your solution which the rest of the crowd. So that is a very important thing that you need to keep in mind whenever you are working on any product design question. Rest, practice, practice. Don't just do theory. Start doing actual product design questions with your friends. So this is the product design. Any specific questions? Okay. So Prioritize ruthlessly means is that whenever you're working in an environment, you'll have tens of different requests coming in. So sales might say prioritize this, customer support might say prioritize this, your boss might say prioritize this. So it's very difficult to like say yes to all these requests. So can you look at all those user needs and use a framework or a good uh, or a good and logical criteria to identify which are the user needs which are most important and need to be solved, especially when you are doing a product design question where you might be designing an MVP. It becomes even more important. So in an MVP, you need to focus on just the 3 or 4 most important things. So that would mean you have to prioritize ruthlessly from all the user needs that come your way. Okay, I'll move to the next part. So next is root cause analysis questions. These are again a very favorite of any product management interview that you'll go to. So first is, why is this question asked? As a product manager, you have to be the complete owner of the product or feature you're working on. And that means, and nothing works according to plan. You always will notice that a product is facing issues. So this question type analyzes your ability to ask questions and then use data to diagnose issues by asking those questions. What is the framework to solve these questions? It's the MISI framework. MISI means mutually exclusive, cumulatively exhaustive. This means you have to list down all the different possibilities and then ask relevant questions to identify what could be the reason why something is happening. Yes. So what are the steps to solve these RCA questions? So this is a 3-step approach. First is you clarify the problem. Then you ask, clarify problem means you set a context or try to understand what exactly is the problem all about. Second is you ask clarifying questions to get a better understanding of what is the situation or what are the complications that are there. And last is you start forming a decision tree or an issue tree to identify what are the questions that you need to ask to make sure that whether you should go on this side of the decision tree or this side. What are some examples? So any app that you can pick up, you can form examples out of it. For example, Facebook's engagement has gone down by 15%. What would you do as a PM? Or the number of orders on Swiggy has gone down. What would you do about it? So these are the different questions, kind of questions you can get. Now I'll just go into a little detail around what clarifying the problem means. So when you clarify the problem, you ask questions around time. Since when is this happening? If the engagement has gone down, since when has it gone down? What is the extent by which it has gone down? Second is you could talk about geography. Is this drop or dip across all geographies, or is it limited to a particular geography? Third is you could talk about seasonality. So it could be that we had a holiday season and the holiday season has just gotten over. Due to that, there is a dip. If you look at the past year's data, you would notice a similar dip. So next question, logical question to ask is whether it's a seasonal trend or not. Another question you could ask is around device types. So you might ask, okay, are we facing this problem across all device types, or is it specific to a device type which we are focusing on? So that is what I mean when I say clarify the problem. Then the next step is to check whether you have to focus on external factors or internal factors. What are some external factors which could cause the usage or the transactions to go down? Market demand. So maybe the demand for that product or feature has gone down. It could be competition. So you might have had new players coming in the market, which is leading to drop in the usage. Last is negative publicity. And this one is a more recent thing. You might have noticed when Amir Khan made certain comments and he was the brand ambassador for Snapdeal. Then a lot of people had just gone onto the Play Store, uninstalled the Snapdeal app, given it a poor rating. So that again will have an impact on all the health metrics of Snapdeal as a product. So you, as a PM who is very grounded in reality, you need to make sure that has there been any negative publicity or adverse events which have got nothing to do with the product, but which are impacting its usage. So the two things you need to focus on is, after you have clarified the problem, one is you check all the external factors one by one and see if there is anything which you need to dig deeper into. That is part one. The part two is you focus on the internal factors. What are the internal factors? You usually trace the user journey to identify the source of the problem. What do I mean by user journey? For example, if you are using LinkedIn, what is the user journey? You will type in LinkedIn to your browser. You will go to your homepage. You will engage with a certain post. You will go to your notifications tab, or you'll go to your home tab. You'll accept the connection request. So, depending on what the problem is, you would notice what are the, depending on what the problem is, you have to frame the user journey and then identify where the problem could lie. So that is how you focus on the internal factors. So 3 steps, I'll repeat it again. First, you clarify the problem, ask basic questions. Second is you focus on the external factors. And last is you focus on the internal factors. So these are the 3 things you do. And if you do them well, you'll be able to solve any questions that you want to focus on. So now what I'll do is, I have a sample question. I want you to take a moment to think about it, and then we'll start try and solve it. So the situation is this, that the number of transactions on Flipkart has fallen. What could be the reason for this? This is the RCA question which you have been given. First thing you need to do is, in the chat box, tell me what are the clarifying questions that you'll ask. So the first thing you need to do is mention what are the clarifying questions you ask if this is the problem that has been asked to you in the interview. Okay, that's a good question. What do you mean by drop in transactions? Next is, are the transactions following for mobile devices or desktop devices? Then Saurav asks, is the drop sudden or is it gradual? Okay. Have the competitors launched any flash sale? That's another very good question from Saurabh. Okay. Shreyas has also asked a good question. Has there been an update recently? Right. So all of them are very good questions. So I think now you get a hang of how exactly you'll start the question. So you don't have to like jump straight into the solution. First focus should be on identifying what are the possible questions or possible reasons that could there be. So I'll move on to the next slide and tell you the clarifying questions I would have asked. So again, this is a sample list. It is not exhaustive. The first thing I would do is ask about time. So since when is the decrease being observed and how steep is the decrease? Next, after time I come to the quantum. Then I asked about geography. Is it happening across India or happening across specific areas in India? Then would be device or browsers. Is it a mobile thing? Is it a web thing? Then even in apps, it could be app versions, or in browser, this issue could be happening on Safari or Chrome. So you ask those kind of questions. Seasonality, can you have a look at last year's data or last quarter's data to see if there was a similar drip? And some people talked about flash sales or big billion day sale. That is another good question to ask, which is specific to the e-commerce website you're focusing on. Last is, we'll focus on external factors. Has there been some new competitor who has entered, or have they started offering a new sale? Negative publicity is another thing. Has there suddenly been a dip in ratings or app installs? So all those are questions which you should ask while you are doing the interview. And one question you might ask is, how do I remember I have to ask all these questions? So just remember all these keywords. So whenever an RCA question is asked, make sure you ask about time, quantum, geography, device, seasonality, and external factors such as competition and negative publicity. So just remember that you have to ask questions around these keywords, and during the interview, you will find it very easy to recall what are the questions that you should ask. Right. So now that we have asked the clarifying questions, and maybe we have discovered that there is no external factor that is impacting the number of transactions. Now we need to focus on internal transactions. So as I mentioned, to focus on internal transactions, you have to draw the user journey. So how does the user journey of any purchase on Flipkart looks like? I'll quickly show you how I would have drawn the flowchart for that. So this is my understanding of how the user journey for any e-commerce purchase looks like. First, someone opens the app. Second point is you view the homepage. Third is you either search for a product or you just keep on browsing the homepage. Fourth step is you click on a product. Fifth is you view the product page. Sixth is you add to cart. Seventh is you click on buy or purchase, which is go to the checkout page. You choose the payment method, and final step is you make the payment. Now, since the transactions are falling, you have to go one by one through each of these 9 steps to identify where exactly is the problem coming. So go through these steps one by one, like quickly draw this user flow diagram, and then go through these steps one by one as to what could be the potential issue. So what are the questions you could ask? So I'll start with app opening. So has there been a change in the count of users who are opening the app? Then I'll move to the second step. Are the number of views on the homepage same, or has there been a dip in that? Or some technical questions would be, has the loading time of the homepage increased? Then the next question comes to search. So has the number of search queries decreased? What about the conversion rate? So whenever someone searches for a result, he clicks on a result and that he clicks on it. So that is a conversion. So has the conversion decreased? Maybe people are searching, but they are not getting relevant products due to which they are dropping off. That could be another reason. Then is what about the number of products which are being added to the cart? Has there been a decrease in that? Next could be in terms of order confirmation. People who are going to the checkout page, has there been a decrease in that? Last could be, was there an increase in the failure rate of any payment method? You have UPI, you have debit card, credit card, you have so many wallets. Is the dip observed across any particular payment method, or is it uniform across payment methods? And lastly, for the last step, you might ask, what is the success rate of the payments? So generally, every e-commerce site or every payment site has some failure rate of transactions, which is very small, probably 0.1 or 1% or something like that, but it is there. So the last step would be to see whether that payment success rate itself is failing due to some issue with your payment processor or something. So that is how you will unpack any RCA problem and achieve the ultimate solution. And usually the interviewer is not really bothered with what the correct solution is. His primary goal is to understand whether you are able to unpack the problem properly or not. So in this case, I might, as an interviewer, I might say, okay, we might discover that the problem eventually was that payments via Paytm were failing due to a glitch in the integration that was there between us. But to arrive to that solution, you'll have to go through this entire exercise in order to make sure that you have reached the conclusion. And usually if you ask if he has a solution in mind and if you reach that very fast, he'll try to change the solution because he wants you to go through the entire journey of identifying whether you are able to identify all the possible reasons for the problem to occur or not. So that is how you unpack an RCA problem. And are there any questions around this? Okay, Kanak has posted a good YouTube link. So you can check out this YouTube video. I am assuming it would be for an RCA interview. Right. So people are also posting some engineering related questions that they might ask. It could be around app server. Yes. So when you ask the question that has there been any recent app update, if the user says yes, then you need to, if the interviewer says yes, then you need to start digging deep into what could be the app or server issues, what were the UI UX changes done, and then you go through the changes one by one and see if any one of them is impacting the transactions that were happening. So that is how you solve an RCA question. Now we'll move to the next type of question, which is the success metrics question. What is the goal of this success metrics question. The goal is to evaluate. So as a PM, you'll work on a lot of products, you'll work on a lot of features. You need to be in a position to analyze the performance of that feature or product and see how it relates to the company goals. So if you're able to do that, then you'll do well in the success metrics questions. Now, success metrics could be related to a feature or the product itself. So I could ask you, suppose you are the product manager for Swiggy. What are the 3 success metrics you'll focus on a daily basis? Or I could say you're the product manager for Swiggy Pop. What are the 3 success metrics that you would analyze to see whether Swiggy Pop is succeeding or not? Or similarly, I could ask you, you're the product manager for Amazon's homepage. In order to analyze the success of homepage, what are the 3 success metrics you would look at? Yeah. What is the approach for these success metrics questions? The first step is to define the problem. When I say define, I would say you have to describe the feature and product which the user is talking about, and then ask clarifying questions to ensure that you and the interviewer are on the same page regarding the feature or product. For example, if the interviewer asks you, identify the success metrics for Amazon's homepage. So here you need to clarify, does he refer to the Amazon e-commerce shopping website? Is he referring to the web page or the mobile app? Second is, what does he mean by the homepage? Is it the page that is displayed on the first app open instance or the first time I enter the browser, the URL in the browser, amazon.com? So you need to clarify all these questions to ensure that the success metrics you are working on are aligned with what the interviewer is thinking about. Second part here is to identify the goals. So you will ask the interviewer, what are the business goals that we are trying to achieve? So do we want people to click more on the items on the homepage, or do we want them to spend more time? So we could have different business goals. So you need to be clear on, as a business, what are the goals I want to focus on. Next thing to understand is, what are the user goals when they are using the feature or product. So for example, if I'm using Swiggy Pop, then for Swiggy, the goal is to maximize the orders that the customers are making. So Swiggy Pop was primarily designed to ensure that people who are paying, who want a quick order for a less amount of money, they don't leave the app without giving an order. So that is the business goal from Swiggy's end. But what about the user goal? So I'm looking for a meal which is like a little cheaply priced, and it's a decent quality as well. So that is the user goal at my end. So you need to be clear with the user goal as well, because that might add or change the success metrics you are thinking about. And again, before moving to the next step, clarify with the interviewer that if he's okay with the user goals and the business goals that he wants you to focus on. And when it comes to business goals, then every feature which you build has to tie in with some high level business goal. It could be acquiring new users, it could be revenue, it could be engagement. So make sure that both of you are on the same page regarding the goal which you want to focus on. Next thing is, identify the key user actions. So with respect to that feature or product, what are the key user actions that he can take? For example, if I'm on the homepage, I can like go and search on the homepage. I can click on a widget. I can do these 2 main things. So similarly, if I'm inside Swiggy Pop, so I can do I'll see multiple widgets. I can do multiple actions on them. So be clear on what are the different user actions that the user can take. Here again, it could a useful framework to follow is the acquisition activation framework. So just try to trace the user journey. So see, okay, when the user enters, what happens? How does he engage with that feature? What does the end flow or the happy flow look like? So if you map all these states, you'll clearly identify, okay, what is the user intent? What are the different actions he needs to take? And this way you can also prioritize which are the user actions that we should focus on. And the last step would be to turn those actions into metrics. So once you have the goals ready, you know what are the key user actions, then you will be able to come up with good metrics that will be able to capture whether those goals are being fulfilled or not, and whether those actions are being and whether those actions which help in fulfilling of that goal, they are being done or not. So this is how I would follow any success metric question. I would start with defining the context or the product. Then I would identify the business goals and the user goals. Third is I would identify the user journey. And last is I would use the step 2 and step 3 to identify what are the metrics I would focus on. So this is the approach I would follow. And one important thing to note here is sometimes it's useful to have a negative metric as well. For example, if you're the product manager for, say, any e-commerce site, then while gross merchandise value or the overall transactions is a good metric to focus on, but you also need to be cognizant of the losses or how much you're losing on each transaction. So make sure you have that negative metric for you. So if you're building some feature or some product, while it is leading to one user metric going up, it shouldn't happen that another critical metric should start going down. So make sure that you do that trade-off very well and try to highlight that in your success metric as well. So that is how I would solve a success metric question. Yes, so Ashish has a question of, definitely every PRD you write, you do have to write what will be the success metrics. And in fact, that section comes on the very top after you have defined the problem and the goals. That is the next part. Okay, no other questions. Then I'll move to the last part of the presentation, which is the guesstimate questions. So guesstimate, probably not every company asks them, but some companies ask them. And in general, if you're in college, it doesn't hurt to prepare for these questions, because for an analyst role or for a consulting role, usually these questions are asked. Why do companies ask estimates? So first is they help check your structured thinking, then your ability to deal with ambiguity, comfort with numbers, and last is ability to use estimation to aid decision making. Because when you're doing prioritizing or you're making any decision about entering a market, you always need to do back of the envelope calculations to see whether it makes sense to pursue this idea or pursue this line of thought or not. So that's why it's important that you are able to quickly estimate things. What is the approach to solve this? Again, a 3-step approach here. You clarify the question, then you decide the approach, and last is you come up with the formula. Third is you come up with a formula, last is you unpack, simplify, and solve. So for solving any guesstimate question, there are 2 approaches. One is the demand side approach, which is the top-down approach. Second is the supply side approach, which is the bottom-up approach. So what does demand side mean? Demand side means that you start from the very top, the overall population level. So for example, you have to calculate the number of smartphone users in the country. Then you start from the very top. You identify, okay, what is the overall population of the country? Then you will do a split. Okay, these are the number of high income households, these are the middle income households, these are the low income households. And that is how you go down the tree and start solving the problem. This is the demand side approach. Second is the supply side approach. For example, you are asked a question around like how many orders does a specific McDonald's outlet receive in a particular locality. Now going bottom down is very difficult here. You will get stuck. So here it's better to go supply side. It's better to go bottom up. That what is the overall traffic that is coming to the store, and try to solve it from that angle. So these are the 2 approaches. Generally, I default to demand side approach because that is very easy to solve. But as you start practicing more and more problems, you will identify cases where supply side approach works better, and that is the approach you should use for those questions. What are the tips here? So first is memorizing important numbers. So later I'll share a list with you which shows all the important numbers. So these numbers could be what is the overall population of India, population of US, what is the age-wise split. So what percentage is, say, below 35 years, what percentage is senior citizens. So all those kind of numbers you should memorize. What is the rural urban split? What is the split in terms of households? So around 8 to 10 basic things, which if you memorize, you will be able to solve almost all the questions. Next thing is don't try to solve these questions orally. It's very important to have a decision tree to simplify the calculations, because the more you write and the more you unpack the tree, it becomes easier for you to solve that question. So that would be my second tip. And again, the more you practice these questions, the better you'll get. So in order to give you a flavor of how exactly this works, we'll do a practice question to see whether you got the concept or not. So your question is this: you have to estimate the number of washing machines sold in India. So this, if this were the question that the interviewer asked you, how will you start? What will be the clarification questions you'll ask? So quickly write them down in the chat box. Your question is, you have to estimate the number of washing machines sold in India. How do I start? What other questions do I ask? Okay, very good question. First is, yeah, where in India? Do I mean any specific area? Second is type of washing machines. Are you talking about automatic, semi-load, front load, all those questions? If you're good with the terminology, you can ask in specific terminologies, or you could just say, do you have any specific washing machine in mind? Yeah, top load, front load. Are you talking about the sales of a specific brand, or are you talking about the entire segment in general? Shravan has a fantastic question, very important. What is the time frame are we looking at? Is it 1 day, 1 month, 6 months, 1 year, 10 years? What is the time frame? Naveen asks, what is the price range? Another good question. Ankita has a great question. Are we talking about industrial washing machines or consumer appliances? Very good question. Visheshta has talked about age group, probably not that relevant. Household, commercial covered. Income, demography, these questions probably are not needed to clarify. These will come in once you start assuming the, once you start unpacking the decision tree. Okay, so now I'll show you what is the approach that I follow. Just a second, I think I messed up the slide. Oh yeah, I'll need to share my presentation. Okay, is the PDF visible? Can you see my handwriting over here? Okay. So the first step is to ask some clarifying questions. These are the questions I thought of, but obviously, if your mind is able to come up with more questions at the moment, go ahead. What is the time frame? What is the geography? Is it residential or commercial? Are there any limitations on the type of washing machines? What is the outcome? Once we have asked these clarifying questions, I will have a refined problem statement in my mind. What is the count of all domestic washing machines that have been sold in India in a given year? So after I ask clarifying questions, this is the new problem statement. And now I can begin solving it. And people have given a lot of good options around how they'll go about solving it. You'll have to take into consideration maybe demography, income group, rural urban split, and that is what we are exactly going to do. So the second step after refining the question is to try to come up with a formula. So here it's obvious we'll have to go with a demand side approach. We'll start from the top, overall demand, and then try to filter out and reach the final solution. After we have identified the approach, which is demand side approach, the next step is to come up with a formula. So what is the formula that I came up with? The number of washing machines sold is equal to the washing machines bought by existing customers. So there are customers who had a washing machine, but they are replacing an existing washing machine. Second is, what are the washing machines which are bought by new customers? So you can think of this in terms of market expanding. So for example, there are people who are making an e-commerce transaction for the first time in their lives. Similarly, there will be a lot of people who are buying a washing machine for the first time in their life. So you have to take both these factors into consideration. So this is my basic formula. Now, I'll unpack this formula. I'll clarify what does existing customers and new customers mean. Then I'll elaborate the approach. Now, one tricky thing is, when does the replacement happen? So if you know for any good, there is depreciation associated with it, and there is useful life for any asset that you use. So for example, a laptop or a computer or a phone might have a useful life for 3 years. An appliance such as TV might have a useful life for 7 or 8 years. A car might have a useful life for 10 or 12 years. So depending on the replacement time, you can identify what is the time after which a user will replace that asset. So let's say it is L years. For new customers, you'll have to know. So suppose the market size was M, and now it expands to M into some X. So you need to assume what is the increase in the market size. Once you assume both these numbers, you'll move to the next step, which is what were the number of washing machines sold. It would be the existing count of washing machines that are there in the market divided by the average life of washing machines plus, so this is the new count, which is growth rate into existing washing machines. So this is my neat formula that way in which I just need to plug in the numbers and get the result. When I talk about, you might ask, why is it existing washing machines divided by average life? So here we are assuming for every person whose washing machine gets destroyed or gets damaged or comes at the end of its useful life, he will get it replaced with a new washing machine. So there might be complicated scenarios such as, what if he doesn't get it replaced? What if someone's washing machine gets damaged before it comes to the end of its useful life? So here we are ignoring all those scenarios, and you can clarify with the interviewer whether he wants you to focus on them or not. Because here the purpose is not to like show that you are a great mathematician. It's to show that, yes, you can identify a problem and unpack it to guess the correct answer. So this is the formula. Now I'll put in numbers to identify the answers. I'll start with the total population. I'm assuming it's 120 crores. What are the number of households? So you can assume that a washing machine is bought at an household level. Average household size is 4. I'll divide 120 by 4. I'll reach 30 crores. I'll do a rural and urban split. As per my understanding, it's 70-30. So both in rural and urban, I'll further subdivide it into the different kinds of households. I'll do a penetration rate. So penetration rate is, say, if there are X number of poor households, then what percentage of those households actually own a washing machine? So I am assuming in the rural middle class, the penetration rate is 50%. So 50% of all middle class households in rural areas own a washing machine. Obviously, all these numbers can be a figment of my imagination. You are free to assume. For example, in urban areas, I'm assuming every middle class or rich urban household has a washing machine. So I've assumed the penetration rate to be 100%. So that is how you'll get some numbers. You add up all those numbers and you come up with the total count of washing machines that are there. One thumb rule here is, you always take the assumptions and numbers you have in multiples of 10. Multiples of 10 or preferably multiples of 50 or 100. Because that will simplify the calculations a lot, and try to round off as much as possible. So this is the overall size of the market that I have, which is 8 crores. So these are the households which will possess a washing machine. Now, how do I calculate what are the number of households that will buy a washing machine? So the first part is to calculate how many will be replacing it. That would be market size divided by the average life. That would be 0.8. Then the next step would be the increase in market size. So I am assuming general growth rate of an economy is 5%. So this would be 5% into the market size. That gives me 0.4. So the overall answer I come up with is 1.2 crores. So as per my understanding, this will be my final answer to the interviewer. The number of new washing machines sold in this year are going to be 1.2 crores. So this is how I will arrive at my answer. Now, personally, I had a lot of time to think through this question. That's why my approach is a lot more elaborate. Your approach could be less elaborate as well. For example, you might not do this sub-classification at rural. You could just assume that in rural areas, 50% or 40% of the households have a washing machine. And in urban areas, 50 or 60% of the households have washing machines. So you could do that. Again, depends on the time and the situation. So whenever someone explains you a framework or the approach to solve a problem, he'll give you the best possible or the ideal approach to solve. But you don't have to worry about it too much. You have to know the basic approach that needs to be followed and try to utilize it to the best possible manner while you're actually solving the case question. So any questions around this approach itself? Okay, I see a lot of questions. So Ankit has a good question. Are we considering the COVID impact? I think this is a very good question to ask. You should definitely consider the COVID impact and maybe add a factor. Say that, okay, this was the expected growth rate in the market. This growth rate might be half of what it was expected to be because of COVID. Similarly, the replacement rate, or you might say that if everyone whose washing machine was at the end of its life uh, would have used a new would have bought a new washing machine, you can say that since people are facing a financial crunch, maybe only 50% of the people would be buying a washing machine even though their useful life has ended. So using this way, you can highlight this impact as well. Very good question. Any other questions? Okay, so Vinay has asked, could you tell step 4 again? Yeah, I'll do that. So step 4 is nothing, but I'm just putting the numbers in my formula to get the final answer. So this was the formula that I'd come up with. Washing machine sold is equal to existing washing machines divided by average life plus growth rate into the existing washing machines. So this is the formula. Here I calculate the market size. It comes to 8 crores. I do 8 by 10. 10 is the average life. So you could take it 10, you could take it 5, you could take it 12, up to you. This gives me the replacement number. Existing customers buying a new washing machine. This is new customers, people who are buying a washing machine for the first time. So if washing machine is not intuitive, think of it in terms of smartphones. So there are lakhs of Indian users who are buying a smartphone this year for the first time in their life. And similar to that, there will be lakhs of users who are buying a washing machine this year for the first time in their life. So that growth rate I'm calculating, which is, I'm assuming it to be 5%, which is the general growth rate of any economy. You can assume it to be 2%, you can assume it to be 10%, up to you. You multiply that with the existing market size, you identify what are the new customers for this appliance, and that is how you calculate the overall number. So Fatima has a question around how was the assumption made? So this is the general growth rate of the economy. If you think it's an emerging economy and it's growing very fast, you could assume it 10%, or it could depend on the market as well. For example, the market for, say, smartphones is growing very fast, or for digital transactions, e-commerce is growing very fast. Then you could assume 15%, 20%, 25% growth rate as well. And if you feel certain market is very sluggish, it is not growing at all, you could even say, I'll assume a 0% growth rate. So up to you. You should be able to justify the assumption you are making. That's it. The interviewer just wants you to make a smart assumption and be able to justify it. Oh, okay, my screen is not visible. Does anyone want me to cover any part of this guesstimate problem, or is it clear? Okay. I'll just quickly see if there are any other questions. So Shriji has a question from the first part of the presentation, which is how much relevance does personal struggle and professional commitment? Personally, if your personal struggle is something that you feel is noteworthy and it helped you grow as a person professionally, then you should definitely talk about it. But as a college student, if you can take examples from your college projects or from the positions of responsibility you held in college, I think I would probably give more weightage to those examples. Next question is from Srinivas. Is data science tool proficiency part of PM interviews? No, it is not part of a PM interview. For product analyst interviews, it might be a part, but unless it's a hardcore data PM role, I don't think you need to worry about this. Okay, so Ashish has a question around specific methodologies. So I would say there are just two approaches: demand side and supply side. You solve questions, go through a few YouTube videos. It's fairly straightforward and obvious. And you just need to use elementary statistics like basic division, multiplication, addition. That's it. Okay, if no other questions, I think with that we come to the end of this session and the bootcamp as well. I hope this last session was able to give you a very good idea around what are the different types of questions you can be asked during a telephonic or an in-person interview. And one general advice here is practice as much as you can, because the more you practice, the better you will get at it. So this guesstimate question, the first time I tried solving it, I was absolutely clueless. And similarly for the product design question as well, and even for behavioral, when you try telling a story to someone for the first time, you'll get stuck and you'll think that this does not sound that appealing. But the secret there is to practice as much as possible, and only then you'll get better at it. And I would say a last bit of parting advice here is like, don't worry too much about this. It's just a job at the end of the day. Focus on the basics, keep learning, and eventually you'll get the job you want. So that would be my parting advice. And with that, I'll end the session. You can reach out to me on Gmail or LinkedIn in case you have any further queries. I'll try my best possible to answer them. I'll share the notes, and if possible, I'll share the recordings as well in the coming week. And hope you have a good weekend. Best of luck for your preparations. I'll see if I can join one of the tables for 5-10 minutes and we can have a quick informal chat. Thanks a lot. Bye. This is me signing off. Hope to see you soon. Thank you.